Curls, welcome to part 1 of my Healthy Ends series. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about how to take care of our ends to ensure hair growth and length retention. Today, we're going to start by going through 6 tips for taking care of our ends in general. But before we do that, let's talk about why it's so important to take care of our ends. As a lot of you know, our ends are the oldest and most brittle parts of our hair. They are the most needy and they need the most care. When they aren't taken care of, they're susceptible to breakage, to splitting, and to overall dryness. We want to avoid that. When our hair breaks off and when our ends split, we see no growth and we think our hair doesn't grow. But hair does grow because that's how hair works, and we just want to make sure that we are retaining the growth that we do get from our hair. So with that said, let's dive into my 6 tips for taking care of our ends. Tip number 1 is to keep your hair clean. And the reason why this tip is important is because if your hair isn't clean and if you have a lot of product build up sitting on your hair is going to be a lot less receptive to any products that you put onto it, which means your ends are going to stay dry. When you wash your hair, you get to strip away any buildup that you have and open up your hair follicles so they're receptive to new products coming in. I wash my hair about every 2 weeks, but your schedule could look different depending on what products you use, how much product you use, etc. Try to listen to your hair and pay attention to it, and when you notice that it isn't being receptive to the products, you notice that you're piling products on and it's still feeling dry, it might need a wash. Now, tips number 2 and 3 are going to sound really familiar to you if you watched my natural hair starter pack. If you haven't yet, I'm going to link that video right over here. Please take a look, because for today, I'm just going to brush over these next 2 tips. So tip number 2 is to keep your hair moisturized. Your ends are the most susceptible to dryness, and you want to make sure that you're feeding in as much moisture into them as possible and on a regular basis. Tip number 3 is to seal in that moisture. In my natural hair starter pack, I told you guys that my favorite sealants are shea butter and Jamaican black castor oil, but whatever you choose to use to seal your moisture in, make sure you're pretty religious about it so you don't lose any of the moisture that you feed into your hair. Now, tip number 4. Tip number 4 is to minimize the amount of heat that you use onto your hair. I know it's really tempting to blow dry your hair a lot and straighten it a lot, but your ends are already they're on their last limbs, man. They're just hanging on for dear life, and heat just comes and knocks the life out of them. So try to minimize how much you use heat. I like to keep my heat usage to about 2 times a year. If you do choose to use heat on your hair more frequently, just make sure you're using a thermal protectant or a heat protectant. I don't really have a favorite one right now that I would plug, but I would say that you do need to do that diligence and find one that is going to protect your hair. Tip number 5 is your most foolproof way of taking care of your ends, and it's literally to protect them. Keep your ends hidden from the elements so they are less susceptible to dryness, breakage, and shedding, and the best way to do that is with protective styles. Now, protective styles don't have to always be as elaborate as getting braids or twists or a weave or wigs. Sometimes it can be as simple as getting a bun, which is what I do. I like to tie my hair in a bun in winter when I haven't gotten braids done. I don't always have the time to sit and get braids done. I also don't have the money for a beautiful wig. So I like to stick to simple protective styles. Other really simple protective styles are things like bantu knots, doing pondos, or just doing mini twists with your own hair. Those all work pretty well. Tip number 6 is every black girl's nightmare. But we have to do it, y'all. We have to. There's no getting around this one. If you want your hair to grow, you need to trim it. And you need to trim it regularly. I like to trim my hair about 3 times a year, sometimes 4, depending on what it needs. But the reason why trimming is so important is because you want to get rid of any problematic ends before they spread their problematic vibes to the rest of your hair. So for example, if you have split ends, that split that's on your end is just going to run down the rest of your hair shaft and make all your hair split. Hair with split ends doesn't grow. We don't want that. Ends that are dry and brittle, we want to get rid of them as well so they don't spread their dryness to the rest of our hair. Now we are going to get to talk a little more at length about trimming in next week's video when your girl trims her own hair. I'm due for a trim. It's been a while, and I want to get rid of some of the frizziness that I've been seeing in my hair recently. So those are my 6 tips for making sure that you have healthy ends and you're retaining any hair growth. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share this video, and let me know what you thought. See you next week.